Hey everybody, I've spent all day slaving over a hot laptop to bring you KMO Show episode number 7. It is an audio podcast. It is available wherever you get audio podcasts. So Stitcher, where else? Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, wherever. If the place where you get your podcast, if you search for KMO Show and you don't find it, please let me know. You can post a comment to this video. Anyway, this is my closing rant, or unscripted remarks, that came at the end of the episode. I would encourage you to listen to the entire episode. My guest is Daniel Bocelli, and we talked about large language models and the limitations of trying to teach an AI using nothing but language. It's pretty cool, I think. In the fullness of time, the Headliner app will post a version of that here to YouTube, but in the meantime, there's a link in the description of this video below. So, here's the end. I hope you'll go back and listen to the beginning and the middle. All right. Catch you later. That was Danielle Bocelli, and that was the first half of our conversation. Now, normally I say the remainder of the conversation or the conclusion of the conversation can be found in the next episode of the Sea Realm Vault podcast. That's not actually true in this instance because I didn't get a Vault podcast out last week, which means the conclusion of my conversation with Dr. Ashley Frawley is next in line for the Vault. So it'll probably be a couple of weeks before the conclusion of this conversation with Danielle Bocelli is available in the Sea Realm Vault podcast. And I have to plead new puppy, which is to say I have a new dog. She's almost 4 months old. She's a handful right now. She is at this instant asleep on the floor about 5 feet away from me. But when she's awake, it's very hard for me to get any work done at all. I know. Good problem to have. All right. So just going through some of my notes that I took as I re-listened to this first part of the conversation with Danielle Bocelli. First, she started to talk about embodiment, and then we didn't really take that conversational avenue. There are people who think that in order for current AI systems to become genuine AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is to say to have a flexible sort of intelligence which can be applied to a variety of tasks and a variety of fields and not have to be specifically trained in any one area in order to bring, its powers of cognition to solving problems in that area, it can't just be a disembodied thing in a computer. It needs to have a body. And while we didn't talk about embodiment in general, time and again, Danielle came back to the question of what are the limitations of learning just from language? Because we are embodied beings with 5 senses, maybe 6, and, we feel, we touch, we understand how our bodies are related to other objects around us, how they're oriented in space. I don't have one right now, but I understand that most humans enjoy a sense of smell, which when mine turns on, it's kind of like a superpower. It's like, hey, wait a second, I'm suddenly getting information about the world and I can't see the source of this information. I can't hear it. I can't touch it. Where is it coming from? But, that's my cross to bear. But that's just my off the top of my head explanation as to why some people think that an AGI to genuinely emerge and, be present in the world has to be embodied, has to have what we would think of as a robot body. But in order to make sure that I've really got, a handle on the arguments, I went to the Google version of GPT-4 or the Google version of Bing Chat. It's called Bard. And it is based on a large language model called LaMDA, which was in the news last year when Blake Lemon claimed that LaMDA was sentient. I'm pretty sure it's not. And Bard is still in an experimental stage. Not everybody can access it, but because I own a Pixel phone, which is a phone, designed and sold by Google, they gave me special early access to Bard. And so I asked it, "Hi, Bard. Some people claim that for AGI to be fully realized, it must be embodied. Would you flesh out that argument?"
Sure. There are a number of reasons why some people believe that embodiment is necessary for AGI. First, embodiment allows an AI to interact with the world in a way that is not possible for a purely disembodied AI. This interaction can provide the AI with a wealth of information and experience that can help it to learn and grow. For example, an AI that is embodied in a robot can learn about the world by interacting with objects and people in the real world. This type of learning is not possible for a purely disembodied AI, which would only be able to learn from data that is provided to it by humans. Second, embodiment can help an AI to develop a sense of self. This is because embodiment allows the AI to experience the world through its own senses and to interact with the world in a way that is unique to it. This sense of self is important for AGI because it allows the AI to develop its own goals and motivations. For example, an AI that is embodied in a robot can develop a sense of self by interacting with other robots and humans. This sense of self can help the AI to develop its own goals, such as wanting to be helpful or wanting to learn more about the world. Third, embodiment can help an AI to develop empathy. This is because embodiment allows the AI to experience the world through the senses of another being. This can help the AI to understand the feelings and experiences of others. For example, an AI that is embodied in a robot can develop empathy by interacting with humans. This empathy can help the AI to understand the needs and wants of humans and to develop relationships with them. In conclusion, there are a number of reasons why some people believe that embodiment is necessary for AGI. Embodiment allows an AI to interact with the world in a way that is not possible for a purely disembodied AI. It can help an AI to develop a sense of self, and it can help an AI to develop empathy.
So there you go. Three more reasons why a genuine artificial intelligence, an artificial general intelligence, needs to have a body and be present in the physical world. Now, you could argue, and many people have argued, that that's kind of dangerous. We want to know what the AGI is before we turn it loose, physically turn it loose in the world. One possible alternative is that you can simulate, you can have the AI be embodied in a simulated body in a simulated world. For instance, it could be, the avatar in a Minecraft world. That's a very simple world, but it might be enough for an entity to get a sense that it is a thing that moves around in physical space, that interacts with objects, which transforms objects in order to accomplish tasks. It encounters other entities, kind of like itself in as much as that they are entities. Some will be friendly, some will be hostile, some will be neutral, some will be friendly or hostile depending on how you interact with them. In Minecraft, you encounter all of these different types of entities. I think another conceptual tool that you should have in the back of your mind when you're listening to people talking about AI and talking about the prospects for AI is something called Polanyi's paradox. And again, it's another look at the question of what are the limitations from learning just from language. Polanyi's paradox basically says we know more than we can say. Or as some search engine chat entity that I queried, and I didn't write down the source, I just wrote down the definition that it gave me. It defined Polanyi's paradox as the theory that human knowledge of how the world functions and capability are, to a large extent, beyond our explicit understanding. We don't know exactly how it is we keep our balance when we walk. We just do it. And because we just do it and we don't explicitly understand it, we can't really explain it to a machine. I have been mostly listening to, even when it's videos, I tend to take them in audio form. But one thing that I've listened to and watched recently on the topic of AI is a presentation by Tristan Harris and Azza Raskin. Tristan Harris was one of the people responsible for that Netflix special called The Social Dilemma, which came out a year or so ago on Netflix. And he and Azza Raskin have a presentation that they call The AI Dilemma, talking about some of the very surprising and concerning developments in AI and talking about just how quickly all of this is being deployed, how the capabilities of AI systems are improving much faster than our ability to align them with our goals and our values. It's not alarmist, it's not doomsaying, but it is certainly, it will give you food for thought and reason to take this issue seriously. So the two of them have a podcast that they do, but I would definitely suggest starting with the YouTube video, The AI Dilemma. And something that I said in this interview, I noticed is not really true anymore. I said that these large language models, they're just using statistical tricks to predict what should come next in a conversation. So they have been fed basically all the text that is available, all the text on the internet, all the books that can be fed into it. So it's got lots of examples of language, and it can basically look at the language that you've used in asking your question and very reliably and very convincingly put out text that is relevant to what you've said. It is a plausible next entry in the conversation, but it's not always correct. It's not always accurate. And I say that these large language models, they don't really have any memory. They're basically just doing statistical tricks to produce output which seems plausible to us humans, but they don't model the world, and they don't update their model based on experiences, based on whether predictions that they make come true or not. We hopefully do that. If we think we understand a situation and our understanding leads us to expect a certain outcome and that outcome doesn't happen, hopefully we re-examine some of our premises. We hold some of our hypotheses up for examination and give them the axe if they are consistently producing bad outcomes or failed predictions. And I say that these large language models, they don't have anything like that. Well, GPT-4 can use tools, which is to say it can query other types of software. And some of these other types of software that it can query are basically memory modules. So while the large language model by itself doesn't really model the world the way that we do, it doesn't create an abstract representation of the world that it uses to navigate the world and updates as necessary based on new information as it becomes available. A sort of emergent entity, which is a combination of a large language model plus several other different types of software that get queried and brought into the task as needed, can start to think and model the world the way we humans do. Not exactly the way we do, and not as competently as we do yet. But things are moving really quickly now. There's this paper called Sparks of AGI, which is to say GPT-4 is not an artificial general intelligence. It is still narrow. It doesn't have the full range of cognitive capabilities that we do. But every now and again, it shows little glimmers that it's getting close. And it could be that these large language models are overhyped, that their capabilities are magnified by our fascination with them, that they're really not as competent as we seem to think they are, because they've basically been optimized to wow us and to get us to see them as being more capable, competent, and complete than they really are. And it could be that in the coming months and years, we will come to see past this sort of showbiz illusion of these things and recognize their very real, persistent, and sort of dogged limitations. Or it could be that they continue to improve as quickly as they have recently, and they get really good really fast, and people who haven't been paying attention to this suddenly wake up to a world in which AGI is a thing and they never saw it coming. So here's the service that I'm looking to offer. I don't write code. I'm not a technical person. My website, which is a WordPress website, is beyond my understanding. It has been built by various other people, and one of the reasons why I started a new podcast is my creaky old website needs a lot of work to be, brought up to spec, to current standards, and I'm not the guy to do it. But the service I offer is this. I'm pretty good with words. I'm pretty good at understanding abstract systems and arguments. And while I don't have a very good memory for episodes, which is to say, I don't remember things that happened to me all that well, apparently, I do have a pretty good memory for concepts and arguments that I can reproduce on the fly. And so I'm just going to continue to pay attention to this topic, and I'm going to be jabbering into smartphones and microphones, basically trying to make sense of it all in real time on stage for you to look at, listen to, comment on, and hopefully benefit from. So I'm mostly talking from the perspective of a non-technical person, but I'm relaying ideas and understanding that I gain from speaking to technically oriented people. I hope that's valuable to you. All right, if you notice things that I got wrong, the guest got wrong, or we both just failed to consider, and remember, you've only heard half the conversation, so we might have gotten around to it in the second half, do let me know. And I would suggest that you do that by leaving a comment on the YouTube version of this podcast or on my Patreon page, patreon.com. Now, it could be that you have to be a paying subscriber to leave comments, but I do have a $1 a month donation level, which for most of you, I suspect, wouldn't really alter your quality of life if you paid $1 a month in order to be a member of the people interacting, with me and with each other on my Patreon feed. You may disagree, and since we're not in the same room at the same time talking, your judgment is law in this regard. But just putting the idea out there. All right, that's all for this episode. I will be back 1 week from today with another episode. I may or may not get an episode of the C-Realm Vault podcast out between now and then. There is this whole tax thing to deal with. I have just a few days left, and I haven't started. Wish me luck. Talk to you soon. Stay well.